McLeod, Casey Mears, Chandler Smith, and J.J. Yaley. 8 drivers, 4 spots. Half of them will make the Daytona 500. The other half will go home. And not just home from a regular race weekend, home from the Daytona 500, the race that opens the season, the race that sets the narrative for everything that follows, the race that drivers and teams spend their entire offseason preparing for. To come all that way and not make the field is a gut punch that's hard to put into words. The weight of missing the Daytona 500 is different from missing any other race on the calendar. NASCAR has opened its season with the Daytona 500 every single year since 1982. That's over 4 decades of this race serving as the launching pad for everything else. William Byron has won the last 2 runnings of it back-to-back. Denny Hamlin is the active leader in Daytona 500 victories with 3, and every driver in the sport understands what a win there can do for a career and a season. So when NASCAR tightens qualifying to this degree and makes it this difficult and unforgiving to earn a spot in the field, they're raising the stakes enormously for drivers and teams who are already operating on smaller budgets and thinner margins than the big charter teams. And the pressure of getting in is even bigger in 2026 specifically because of another major change to the sport this year. The chase format is back. After the playoff elimination system that NASCAR has been running for years, the sport is moving to a new championship structure where the top 16 drivers in points after the regular season enter a 10-race championship showdown to end the year. Crucially, there are no eliminations cutting the field down every few weeks like there used to be. Instead, all 16 championship drivers run all 10 races, and whoever has accumulated the most points when everything is said and done wins the cup. That means consistency matters again in a way it hasn't for a while. Winning early matters again. And starting the season with a Daytona 500 win doesn't just feel great, it gives you a genuine, meaningful head start in a championship format that rewards sustained excellence over the course of an entire season. So the stakes for the Daytona 500 have never felt higher going into this season, which makes the brutality of the qualifying format feel even more significant. NASCAR is essentially saying that if you want to be part of the biggest race of the year, you earn it. Pure speed, or fighting your way through a duel with one open spot. No safety net, no shortcuts. And a lot of fans and people inside the sport respect that philosophy. It's hard and it's harsh, but there's a clarity to it. Show up and be fast enough, or find a way to win when it counts. But here's where the story takes a very interesting turn, because just days after these strict and unforgiving qualifying rules were laid out, something happened at the NASCAR Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium that told a completely different story about how NASCAR handles things when conditions get complicated. And the contrast between the two situations has people asking some very pointed questions. The Clash was set up to be a short-track throwback kind of event, gritty, physical, old-school racing at a small venue with a lot of history. The kind of racing where strategy and risk-taking matter, where teams can gain edges by making bold calls, and where the best crew chiefs and drivers win partly by being smarter and braver than the competition. That's what everyone expected. What they got instead ended up sparking a genuine debate about how much NASCAR should be managing the action once the race is actually going. Bad weather came rolling in during the race. Sleet started falling while cars were still on the track. Teams had wet weather tires prepared and ready to go, which is exactly the kind of situation where a smart crew chief can gain a major advantage by reading the conditions correctly and making the right call at the right time. But instead of letting the teams manage it however they saw fit, NASCAR paused the race to dry the track and then told all the teams to switch to wet weather tires before they resumed. No choice in the matter, no strategic decision for the teams to make. Everyone was put on the same tire at the same time by order of the officials. Then, later in the race, on lap 165, NASCAR issued a mandatory fuel stop. The reason given was that multiple cars had run out of gas, which was causing problems on the track. During that mandatory stop, the crew for Carson Hocevar and the number 77 car made the decision to bolt on slick tires instead of the wet weather tires everyone else was using. They got penalized for it, which in itself created a whole other conversation. But the bigger issue that people focused on was the mandatory stop itself and what it meant for the teams who had been carefully managing their fuel strategy throughout the race. Jeff Gluck, who covers NASCAR and is well respected for his honest and informed takes on the sport, made his feelings about the situation pretty clear. He expressed real discomfort with what he described as NASCAR hand-holding teams through situations that should be left to the competitors to figure out. He drew a comparison to Formula One, where teams are responsible for their own strategic decisions. If you gamble on tire choice and it doesn't work out, that's your problem. If you run light on fuel trying to gain a speed advantage and you run dry before the end, you live with that consequence. The risk is real, the reward is real, and the consequences are real. That's what makes strategy meaningful and exciting. But when NASCAR issues a mandatory fuel stop, teams that had done the disciplined work of managing their fuel carefully suddenly see their advantage disappear, and teams that had been pushing their luck with fuel and were about to pay the price for it get bailed out by the caution. The strategic work gets wiped away, and everyone gets reset to roughly the same position. James Small, the crew chief for Chase Briscoe on the number 19 car, was also vocal about his frustration with how things were handled. When crew chiefs who are competing at the highest level of the sport start speaking up about this kind of thing, it's worth taking seriously. As fans, it's not hard to understand why this bothers people. NASCAR has always presented itself as a sport built on risk and consequence. You make a bold call. You either look like a genius or you suffer for it. That tension, that possibility of a strategy backfiring spectacularly or paying off beautifully is part of what makes the racing compelling. When officials start stepping in to remove those consequences, it changes the nature of what we're watching. It makes the racing feel more managed and less authentic, and a lot of fans, not just crew chiefs and insiders, feel that shift. Which brings you back to the central tension that makes all of this so fascinating heading into the 2026 season. For qualifying at Daytona, NASCAR is showing an almost brutal commitment to letting competition decide everything. 8 drivers, 4 spots. Figure it out on the track. No mercy. That philosophy is clear, and it's consistent with what a lot of people believe racing should be about. But then when actual race conditions get complicated and messy, the response is mandatory tire calls and mandatory fuel stops that erase the work teams have done and protect teams from the consequences of their own decisions. Those two approaches are fundamentally at odds with each other, and the sport is essentially doing both of them at the same time. That contradiction is what a lot of people inside and outside the garage are wrestling with right now. You cannot tell drivers and teams that they have to fight for their lives just to earn a starting spot in the Daytona 500, putting everything on the line with no safety net, and then turn around during the race itself and start managing outcomes when things don't go smoothly. Fans notice that inconsistency. Competitors notice it even more, and when the biggest race of the year is also supposed to be the first major indicator of what this championship format is going to feel like, that inconsistency matters more than usual. The 2026 Daytona 500 is carrying more meaning than almost any edition of the race in recent memory. It's the launch of a new championship format that puts a genuine premium on consistency and early momentum. It's a race where 8 drivers are fighting for 4 spots in one of the most unforgiving qualifying systems the sport has ever put in place. It's a race with enormous historical weight, coming off back-to-back wins by William Byron, and always overshadowed by the question of who might match or surpass what Denny Hamlin has built in this event. And now it's also a race where the broader philosophical question about what kind of sport NASCAR wants to be is sitting right at the surface. Does NASCAR trust its teams and drivers to make their own calls, live with their own consequences, and let pure competition sort everything out? Or does it step in when things get complicated to protect the show and keep outcomes tidy? The qualifying format suggests one answer, the Clash suggested another, and how NASCAR handles the inevitable chaos and drama of a Daytona 500 with this much on the line is going to tell us a lot about which direction the sport is actually heading. These are the kinds of questions that real NASCAR fans care about deeply. Not just who wins, but what the winning means, and whether the competition that produced it was genuinely free and fair, and true to what this sport has always been about at its best. That's the conversation heading into Daytona, and it's one of the most important ones NASCAR has had in a long time. What do you think about all of this? Are you a fan of the new qualifying format and what it demands from open teams? Do you think NASCAR overstepped at the Clash by mandating fuel stops and tire changes? Or do you think they were right to step in and manage a dangerous situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is exactly the kind of debate that deserves real input from real fans who understand the nuances of the sport. If you got something out of this breakdown, please like the video and subscribe to NASCAR Insider News. We are a brand new channel pushing toward our very first 100 subscribers, and every single person who joins this community makes it stronger and more meaningful. We're here to give honest, thoughtful coverage of everything happening in NASCAR without any spin or filler. Daytona is coming fast, the pressure is building, and this season is shaping up to say something important about the future of this sport. We'll see you for the next one.